Today we're talking about child trafficking in the foster care system. So before last time when I explained the foster care system, it was a really busy week for everyone. So I also honestly didn't really go that deep, I think, deep enough into the foster care system. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're definitely going to have conversation dialogue, but I think this is going to be more of like a learning kind of type of meeting, because this is definitely a topic I didn't even really know that much about. Before we start, can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. Okay. So I have this on so I can see all your beautiful faces, but I'm going to go like this so it's not awkward. This week, it's going to be triggering for some. Anybody, has a history or knows someone, etc. We are going to be talking about sexual assault in regards to the foster care system. So at any point, if anybody needs a break, etc., please feel free to go. You can go, don't even have to come back. Just please know that this is a very safe environment and that you are always welcome to do what's best for you. Okay. So first slide, and then let's go to the next one. So different environments in foster care. This is just to get a general understanding. There's foster homes, which there's regular and therapeutic. And mind you, this is just in Connecticut. I don't know enough about the foster care system nationally, but I know that in Connecticut there's regular, and that basically means that parents, anybody, individual, etc., can do, I think it's like 40 hours worth of or less than that, where they're training with DCF, and then they're allowed to foster care, they're licensed to foster care. Therapeutic, you just have to do more hours, and it's like you have to keep getting relicensed. You usually make more money. So foster homes are literally like usually homes, apartments, etc. Groups homes, they are usually, it can be an actual home, or it can be, any type of living space in general. And it has usually several foster kids. And there's staff, 24-hour staff. There's usually a clinician, usually a supervisor, and it's basically a home kind of institution, if that makes sense. And anybody at any point has any questions about any of this, please like raise your hand or literally just interrupt me, because it can get confusing. Residential facilities are basically institutions, but on a higher level. There is someone that I know who's probably knowing what I'm talking about, knows exactly, sorry, I don't want to, whatever, this is going to be funny. This is bringing up a lot of memories, but because I was in a residential facility at one point. But basically they are long-term intensive facilities, institutions. There's one that's in Middletown, Connecticut, and foster kids can live there among non-foster kids, but this is just one of the many places that they go to, and it's usually if you have like a mental health issue, struggle with like substance abuse, etc., and you usually have a school there, you eat there, you sleep there, everything. That's just where you stay for a really long time. There's shelters. I do know some foster kids that have gone into homeless shelters, or there's shelters in Connecticut that are for moms and their babies, so there's that option. Star homes, which are basically, I guess they're like shelters, but they're specifically for like foster children or children that are like in the DCF process transitioning into like being a foster kid. And they're supposed to be really short, although sometimes it can extend to months being in a star home, but they're basically like group homes, just higher intensity, if that makes sense. And also, just to let you guys know, for group homes, there's different levels you can be at, and it's a system, it's an institution. So it can be very complicated when thinking as a home. So mental health facilities, there's one, it's called Natchog. It's like right down the street from UConn. But they're basically just it's a locked facility where you stay. Usually you're only supposed to stay for like a week, two, but I do know cases where people have stayed there for a month, longer than that. And you basically, again, eat, sleep, do group activities there, intensive therapeutic sessions that you have to go to every week. You have group sessions. So again, an institution. And then apartments for foster transitioning adults only. So basically, it's called, you go into the CHAP program, and that's if you go on to post-secondary education, vocational training, basically something beyond high school. And if DCF is willing to fund that, in which all the time they're not, they make a decision if they are willing to do that or not, then you can, one of the things, if you don't want to live on campus, you can get an apartment, and they'll pay for that, and they'll pay for your rent, etc. And they have apartments that are by agencies such as DEMIS, which is basically an adult version of, it's linked with DCF, but it's like specifically just for older adults, which I would be considered one. So it's not like you're actually old, you're just 18 plus. So you're not a minor. So before watching this video, I kind of spoke a lot. And there's a lot of similarities and differences within all these institutions. And I'm not even going to go into like more of that. I just wanted you guys to get a basic understanding of what these places are. So before going on to the video, has anybody lived in these places, know someone that's lived in these places, know about these places, have an experience, just kind of any knowledge that some may have? So I see a thumbs up by Aubrey. So yeah. I don't want to, whatever, speak for you or anything. But is there anything you wanted to type or say about any of this? I'm looking at the chat. They're more scary when you're in them than out. I definitely agree with that. It's definitely living in these places personally, and I know, Aubrey, that you can relate, that these are definitely being in an institution, even in a foster home. It's very difficult, and you're alone for most of the time. And literally physically safety. You're oftentimes in place, and I don't know if you agree, Aubrey, I don't want to be speaking for you, but I feel like you are forced into this flight or fight mode all the time, 24/7, when you're living within these institutions. Yeah. So that also, yeah, she said adrenaline is constant, and I definitely agree with that. Even when you're sleeping, which is why you find a lot of these kids have sleeping problems and also need medication. That's going off of topic, but that kind of everything is very interconnected, interdependent when it comes to the issues that these kids faced or that we faced while in these institutions. So thank you so much, Aubrey, for sharing. And yeah, I'm smiling because I'm thinking of memories, even if they're not great, they're still taught me a lot in life. So I'm gonna move on. Is everybody good? Is this confusing to anybody? Any questions? So we're gonna watch this. And this is basically, his name is Dazani. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but his experience within a group home.
Being in a group home is like lockdown. It's like having a big old chain attached to your leg. You go, and if it don't work out, you go somewhere completely different. It's like you're just bouncing from place to place to place to place to place. You don't know none of these people. These people is brand new. It's a whole new experience. It's a whole new wave. You feel me? It's a whole new environment. Everything is different. You give a man feet, he gonna walk. Give a man a scooter, he gonna scoot. Give a man a skateboard, he gonna skate. Give me a bike, I'ma ride that damn bike. You feel me? It's just, damn. It's a getaway.
Okay, so that was very short, but that can give you insight on what, I can't see you guys, but that's okay. Sorry, I always like looking at you guys, but on what group homes look like. And so what hit me the hardest, I think, was that you're just constantly, if that place doesn't work out, then you go to another one. And that's so true within these institutions. If it doesn't work out because of your behavior or because of extenuating circumstances, you will be moved, and several times. And it's not uncommon for kids living in these situations to keep being moved repeatedly. And I also, the reason why I wanted to show that is because he said, if you're going to skate, I'm going to skate. If I have feet, I'm going to walk, etc. There is a commonality in these places to run away, or to feel like you want to run away, but literally to run away, or known as AWOL. In group homes, and literally every single one of these facilities, it's not uncommon for kids to want to run away, just because of even, the things Tasani said, but also I think we could imagine some of the struggles that would arise living in an institution. And sometimes it could be compared, and I know this might be really dramatic, and this isn't even just coming from like my heart, there's been research done about this, but imprisonment, it literally can feel like prison. All right, so can anybody think of disparities or challenges within these environments? I have some over here that I'm going to explain after, but I just want to get any thoughts down or anybody's ideas.
I think just like connecting with people. If you're like constantly moving, maybe it's hard for you to like connect.
I definitely agree. I'm trying to figure out how to write this down, but I might not be able to, so it's just going to be blank. But connection is definitely something that's difficult for people, like you said, moving to place, and I think just even connecting with ourselves. I often think you can lose your individuality, or it's hard. It can be really challenging for people in these situations to find their identity. So I really like that on a connection with other people, and then also connection with yourself.
If you have a pre-existing health condition and you need to escape a certain abusive environment, you might not be able to do so.
I definitely agree with that. When pre-existing conditions, I actually like, I'm just genuinely interested. How do you think that would like range from like, physical conditions, mental conditions, etc.? What are your thoughts upon that? Because personally, from like what I saw is that you're so right in that in these places. My face is really red because I have a candle right here. I know I shouldn't. I'm so sorry. um but that a lot of the kids in these environments have a lot of pre-existing mental health conditions, schizophrenia, PTSD, dissociative disorder, personality disorders, etc. And those are very difficult to live with, and to it can make it challenging to live in these environments safely, if that makes sense. So do you have like any thoughts on like that kind of stuff? I don't
I
know.
was wondering more so, like, say you had diabetes and you needed an insulin pump, if you'd have better chances of getting your needed medication if you were at a foster care home, even if you were in an abusive environment at the foster care home and you needed to run away for your safety, like, would you be able to? Would you be able to get your medicine to live? And then with mental disorders, like, could they be exacerbated by the conditions they're living in? But then would it be even worse? Like, where's the grass greener, in the foster homes or out on the streets, you know?
I definitely thank you for saying that. And that's a topic that I didn't even think to go over. But and Aubrey, I don't know if you want to write anything about this or speak about this, but from what I've seen, and I currently work for DCF, so I also like oversee a couple of situations and circumstances that have to kind of are similar to that issue. But medically, I know that medical disparities within foster care and within these institutions, it's hard, because of the fact that mental health plays in. When it comes to diabetes, they actually do have like specific houses, group homes for kids with diabetes, kids with medical conditions. And I don't know how those function, but I do know that if it's to a certain severity, they will place you somewhere that's specific for that. When it comes to foster homes, usually it's preferred that the foster parent is skilled or knowledgeable. They'll have extra training with kids with those medical conditions. When it comes to mental health, I think you have a very strong point in the sense that it's difficult because I made this connection when you were speaking with physical conditions and mental health conditions. And if, let's say, like you do have several health problems, it's oftentimes in every single one of these environments, it can be downplayed because of mental health issues you may have. So they won't really look at you as if you have a medical issue. Especially, we all know this can differ depending on your race, gender, language, etc. But they are not always staff, foster parents, social workers aren't always equipped to recognize medical problems if you also have mental health issues. I don't really necessarily know if that makes sense to anybody or if what I'm saying makes sense. Yeah, but that's always an issue. Thank you for bringing that up. That just brought up like a lot of I don't know, insights, so I appreciate that. I really liked what you said, Aubrey. They tend to downplay it by 100 or 100 times more from your experience. If you run away, they put the issue before any medical issue. And there are laws for neglect in terms of care, but they're not enough. I definitely think you're right. I think in these environments, especially the institutional ones, when you are on good behavior, which if you think about it, any person, whether your history, whatever, in these environments, when they're locked in, when they aren't given freedom, when etc., you're gonna want to like go. So like not looking at anything past that, just that basic, you know, need for freedom, need to live. They look at your behavior or what you did wrong in a sense, without looking like why did you do that? Or like sometimes people do run away. This is personal, but I ran away once because they wouldn't bring me to the hospital, and I ended up getting my gallbladder taken out because I had a gallbladder infection. So these situations, and like then I got in trouble when I went back to a group home because I ran away, even though I needed to go for literally medical reasons. So I think, Aubrey, you have such a point that oftentimes these institutions look at your behavior rather than what's behind that, or why and your medical conditions aren't prioritized. Thank you for bringing that up. So some disparities within these environments are abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual. And this doesn't have to be like huge, straightforward, you know, you got hit, etc. I'm not going to go into those details. They can be small, and it can be over time, it can be hidden, but there's definitely abuses of commonality within these environments. Neglect or being uncared for. I know Aubrey brought that up when they are like, there's been several cases within these environments in Connecticut too. And if you just look up, you know, certain like, I guess, group homes, neglect, like in group homes in Connecticut, you'll see a bunch of cases. But that is a disparity within these environments. Inadequate care, that kind of goes with neglect. No access to fundamental needs such as food, clothing, hygiene products. Sometimes foster parents, they won't feed or they won't give food, clothes, etc. to their foster children, and it's up to the foster children to be able to get that. And so this also, sometimes group homes, they're legally allowed to restrict, not food, but they're allowed to restrict you of certain privileges, such as getting clothing. It sounds crazy, but it's the reality of certain institutions, but they can restrict you of those needs depending on your behavior. Going back to what Aubrey said about how your behavior plays an important role in how they treat you. And so lack of freedom and temporary bonds, which Anna brought up earlier about needing that connection. Thank you for everyone that contributed. So we're just going to watch this quick video, and now we're going to get into child trafficking. And this honestly explains everything really well. It might be hard to watch. Trigger warning. Again, I'm going to emphasize that.
And unfortunately, I would say a majority of our victims, and when I say majority, like 90% of them, are in the DCS and foster care system.
It's definitely true that foster care is the first step in a long line of bad experiences for many children. Foster care is absolutely a pipeline into sexual exploitation. There are pimps who focus on group homes for foster children, and they can empty a group home out, in a matter of weeks.
These children were abused or neglected, and somehow somebody saw that and recognized it, and we didn't.
Many of our victims of human trafficking for the purposes of sex, commercial sex, are our own children that are being taken right off the streets. They're being recruited from schools, out of arcades, on social media.
Modern day slavery is wherever we're looking for it. It's been identified in all 50 states.
The average age of entry into prostitution in the U.S. is 12.
We've had victims as young as 10 years old in our unit.
And I've yet to come across a 12 or 13-year-old child who's out there because she wants to. She's being forced to be out there.
When we look at sex trafficking, a lot of people think, okay, maybe there's a lot of runaways in that system, a lot of 12-year-old girls who come from broken homes and come out of some kind of system or have gangster boyfriends or something. Those are those girls, as if they're different. The truth is, we are not adequately funding this because it is impacting females much more predominantly than males. And I don't know what it's going to take for people. Those aren't those girls. Those are our girls. This is our country. These are our daughters.
Sonia had been one of the thousands of kids in the foster care to streets pipeline.
How old were you when you first were in?
I was 6.
What happened to your real mom?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Nobody told
Oh, wait, I
you?
know where she's at.
Where is she?
San Bernardino.
In prison?
No.
Or she's just
out there.
Is she a drug addict?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you got taken to foster care?
Mm-hmm.
Was she abusing you, or was anybody?
I don't remember none of that.
Upwards of 90% of the girls that we work with that have been exploited have had sexual abuse in their history as children.
Prostitution is a one-upsmanship on child sexual abuse. you lay in your bed and someone comes in as a child and they molest you and stuff. It's like you're not in control, but it's like, if this is what people want from me, then I'm going to do it on my terms.
Well, I went from an A and B student, honor roll student, involved in lots of activities, to skipping school, running away. I ran away from home, and then I ended up with a pimp.
Somewhere between 48 and 72 hours, when this child leaves home, she's going to run across a pimp that's looking for these kids, and their paths are going to cross.
Run these streets.
So you from the
streets? I was 12 when I started having sex.
The sexualization of children is a pretty accepted part of American culture.
Padded swimsuit tops for 8-year-olds. Abercrombie & Fitch's latest attempt to sexualize its youngest customers. We still view sexually vulnerable girls as predators rather than victims.
Stacey Rambold will now serve 30 days for raping a 14-year-old student. Judge Boss said, quote, "The 14-year-old was as much in control of the situation as her defendant, the adult rapist."
A lot of what we hear is the younger the children, the more money. Even though they're not legally of the age to consent to sex, I think because we've just kind of bought into this attitude that they're, like I say, selling themselves, and so I paid money, and therefore, what's the problem?
But isn't there a law that says you're not supposed to sleep with children?
Yes.
Or did I make that up?
No, there's a law. That I just don't think we live by the law. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure why we are, what gives us the legal authority to even arrest children for something that they're not even able to consent to.
So that was definitely a difficult video to watch. And so I just wanna, is everyone doing okay? Just checking in. I'm gonna be checking in, like usually if I am gonna do heavier stuff, I wanna check in a couple times throughout our meetings. So just everyone's good, thumbs up. So as we can see in the video, and I don't need to go over everything it said, but usually foster kids tend to be the population of the prostitution population, or just at a higher rate likely to go into child trafficking, sexual human trafficking. And the reason why I wanted to bring up those environments previously was to get a sense of how difficult it can be to live in these environments. And we talked about running away before, so kind of doing that timeline, you go into this environment, you run away, and it's not like this for everybody, but unfortunately it is like this for the majority. And you run away, and then you will encounter a pimp, like I said, which, what did it say? 72 hours, or what, like 48 to 72 hours, a girl is likely to encounter a pimp, and then you will be sex trafficked. And I think one of the shockers for me was the fact that when it said, I did not know this, I knew of this, but I did not know that it was such a severe issue, is that they will wait with group homes. They will find girls that are vulnerable, that are hurting, that are going, this vulnerable population, which I don't want to make this seem like a weak population. I don't want to be like, make it seem like foster kids or kids in these environments that we talked about before are weak, but they are living in very challenging conditions and deteriorating conditions. So in reality, it is a vulnerable population. So kind of making that connection there. So what stuck out to you the most? Any insights on the statistic displayed? Anything surprising? Is this part of a bigger societal issue? Do you relate to anything that this said?
Something shocking for me was that one girl said she had been having sex since she was 12. Like, I didn't even know how to make, I didn't get the birds and bees until later. But then to be going out and to be experiencing that, I couldn't imagine.
That definitely surprised me also. And I think that this is heightened with girls that have maybe had experiences with sexual assault when they were younger. And this is just me from my experience of living within these different environments, but it's very common. I keep saying common because I want to emphasize that this is just not based off my experiences, is not based off the people I know. The research I've done, overall statistics show that this is a part of a bigger issue. This is the system. This is how, unfortunately, part of what the foundations it lies on, as in just these disparities. And so back to what you said, Mary, I think that girls that are living in these environments tend to have a history of sexual assault, which can make them, more sexually adventurous. And that's going into a whole different concept of sexual assault, trauma, etc. That goes kind of into a whole nother segue. But I really agree with your point that that's very surprising. And I definitely want to do more research on that specific piece in regards to how common is it, or like, how many girls in the foster care system or that, living in these environments for an extended period of time have been sexually assaulted, but also almost, I know in the video it brought up like they need to feel like you're like they're not like unworthiness, not deserving, that this is okay because of what they feel, their experiences teaching them to feel like that.
Can I say something to kind of go off of your point of like being a vulnerable population? Okay, so I think that's like very true. And I think part of what makes girls who may be in like these types of institutions or like in foster care vulnerable is like going back to that whole like survival mode. You're always in fight or flight. So like if you have experiences in the past that have at least allowed you to survive, it might be easier to go back to them, not because it's comfortable, but just because you know that you're going to survive if nothing else. I feel like it takes a lot of strength to be in that vulnerable position, and like that's why the strength comes in dealing with like those things over and over, just reaching out for survival basically.
I definitely agree. Vulnerability in like this, the sense that you're talking about is definitely a big part of the results, the statistics that we just saw. And I think that the strength, like when you brought up strength, to constantly be in that like flight or fight mode, I always like mess up my words on that. But for that long of a time, and almost, it made me think that can, like that whole situation, it can make you find, I don't know if this is what you were talking about, and I don't know if you can like agree in any sense, but going into those situations or those kind of, I don't want to say like bad habits, but just going into those situations that we just talked about, even like sex trafficking, I think that it can sometimes be a place of comfort, or going back to these institutions, just going back to bad things in general. I think it can be, I hope I make sense, but it can be a form of comfort because you're so used to that flight or flight mode, because that's what you had for such a long, not you specifically, I don't want to like whatever, but that's what these individuals had for such a long period of time. And it does take a lot of strength to go through that. And I also think that that can become your normal, someone's normal. So they might resort back to it, or it might not seem like that bad because they're so used to those feelings.
I like definitely agree with that, because I think it goes back to also the fact that it's sometimes reinforced by not having like a stable home in the foster care system. So you don't want to be a burden on anyone, or like maybe like I know from personal experience, like people who might not have wanted to be a burden on their biological parents who couldn't like support them. So then they stayed in a situation that like they were like in sex trafficking, and like they stayed in that just so their family could like not have to support them. So like that totally reinforces it too.
I think I keep saying you're so right, but it's literally just because you're right. And like, that's just, everything you're saying is so intensely valid. And that situation of not feeling like a burden, I think oftentimes just literally the dynamics of these different living environments make you feel like you're a burden, even if those aren't the intentions. Just the feeling that you're coming into a new environment, you haven't been with this family, this group of people, these staff for a really long time, and they're literally like all of a sudden now they have to take care of you. It's just naturally going to be the fact that you're going to feel like a burden. So, and also that story, that experience, that really hit home. Sorry, that just kind of like, I was just like, so thank you for sharing. So we're gonna end very soon. There's a video, but it was basically just the video we just watched. It was just someone's personal experience. So feel free to watch it. I'm gonna add the link to the email, the sheets that we send out, or the visuals we send out in GroupMe. So that will be there, but it's nothing new. So that's why I'm not gonna share it for time purposes. But on the website to this link, they have a bunch of information about child trafficking in regards to foster kids or people that have experienced the foster care system, experienced these different institutions. And So a couple of the facts or facts that stood out to me was studies and practitioners find the same thing. A majority of women in the sex trade were once in the child welfare system. And then a disproportionate number of girls in foster care are from communities of color and indigenous communities. These populations are already at risk for prostitution due to systemic discrimination, bias, is it penalization? Because I feel like I always say that word wrong, but and lack of financial and structural resources. The trauma that leads to foster placement might be linked to sexual exploitation, like violence or sexual abuse. This trauma is unlikely to be treated in an overloaded system. Instead, it might be progressed, a lot of this we already kind of spoke upon. So this is kind of just putting it all together. And then group homes and correctional placements, which a residential facility could be similar to a correctional placement, are often prime locations. Survivors describe how early sexual abuse made them more vulnerable, which we talked about early sexual abuse before, to the manipulations of an exploiter who knew to use their low self-esteem and transactional experience of sex against them. So those just really stood out to me, and I feel like those are statements or that information is able to connect everything we talked about today, all your insights, and the video. Oh, this is a resource, by the way. This will also, if you guys ever want to share this with anybody, keep it for yourselves. It has multiple hotlines, and then this picture in the back. But so knowing that, I'm sorry, we're running over time. Any last thoughts? Any questions? How's everyone doing? It says thanks and check out. So just kind of checking out.
Yeah, I mean, I think this topic in general is always like shocking to me because it's just something that I just can't believe happens, like it's just crazy. So I think it's important that everybody like talks about this because it's something that happens every single day and we're just not educated enough on this. So
I definitely agree. I didn't even know it was this bad. Like I knew of the ideas, but until I did this research, I didn't realize it was such it's a public issue, human rights issue in a sense. So yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely very surprising, and it's something that not enough know about in the correlation between. But I want to thank you all for being here today and for going through this process with me of figuring this all out, of being informed. And thank you so much for your insights, for those who shared, and for those just your existence. Thank you so much. This means the world to me when we're able to come together and learn. So much love to all of you. I'm literally trying to send out all the positive vibrations I can. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week, and good luck on midterms. I don't know if anybody has midterms this week, but if you do, you're going to ace it, or you have aced it. Bye, guys.
Bye. I don't know if I'm going to be able to come next week because I have an exam on Friday. So I'll let you know, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Maria. This was really informative.
Oh, thank you. And also, I really want to see the results, like after you're done with everything of your Minecraft building.
I'll keep you posted.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so intrigued.
I'm glad someone is. All right. Bye, Maria. It was nice meeting you.
Bye.